Welcome back, everybody. Today we are painting this half moon, half sunshine painting. Of course, you can always just pick one and paint an entire painting out that way. And if you've never painted before, I have an intro video you can jump over and take a look at. It will give you a list of all the supplies you need to get started. And of course, subscribe and save this video so you can make your way back here. This is going to be our sunset painting. This is just some yellow and white paint, and we're making a line across the middle and a little half circle for the setting sun, and then filling in our sky with a little bit of a light blue and some white. These don't have to be very precise. We're not making them thick. We're just filling it in as like a base coat, and you can see this half circle isn't even perfect. And then for the water, this is just a little bit of a darker blue. It's that same blue, just with less white in there, and of course a little bit of water to help our paint move around. And then now you can see this is just some plain blue that we are adding on top of that already wet light blue, and just kind of blending out so we get all those fun cool tones from our sky and from our water, and we can blend it nice and smoothly or let it start to streak for that sunset look or for that wavy look down there in the water. Here's a little bit of purple going in. We just put that right on the edge of where that darker blue color is changing to that lighter blue color. Then we mirror it in the bottom. So since there's a little space from the top, we'll go just a little space from the bottom and jump in with that purple here. And you can see the brush has been turned side to side to start getting those littler lines in the water. That'll give us some little wave water looking streaks. Now for a little streak here or there of some hot pink paint. The trick to getting the little streaks is to just put it on and leave it alone. The more we go into those spaces, the more it's going to mix and blend with the colors already there, and that's just fine. It'll just make another shade of purple for us if we're doing that. Of course, keeping the brush nice and flat by wiping off all the extra paint on both sides and using a very gentle touch. This here is actually a little bit of orange paint. It's kind of hard to tell because it's got some of the light reflecting from the room and the camera and all that. But it's just orange and a little bit of white mixed together to make it a little bit of a lighter orange. If you pick it up and you still have pink paint there, it'll be a little bit more of a peachy color. And then of course right here you can see this super bright orange. This is the same orange and white mixture, and you just pick up a little bit of yellow to kind of get a warmer tone to get that much brighter orange paint. And then of course jumping in with just some plain yellow and some white. You can do them at the same time. Here I did just a little bit of yellow and it was too dark, so grabbed a little bit of white to kind of tone that down, and of course just pushing it down into the water, pushing it up into the sky to where they're almost reflecting each other, and then getting those nice little streaks for the lines of the waves or the lines in the sky, and then just jumping back and forth. This is the base layout for our colors here between our sky and our water, so we can jump around, change it up, either add a little bit more of something we've already added or just touch something up that we've already done with any of the colors. And then going over our little half circle. I guess it's more of a quarter circle here because, well, the other half would be on the other side of the painting, but of course you can adjust accordingly for however you're doing yours, whether you're doing a half and half painting or a whole one, either a quarter circle here or a half circle for your setting sun. We're just using some white paint, and you can see it's mixing with all these wonderful colors that have been wet on our painting and just kind of blending around, and that's okay. We're going for the shape there of that half circle, and then reflecting that white down here in the water for where that beautiful sunlight is just gleaming off of it with little streaks, kind of focusing them in towards the middle where they're a little bit wider as we get closer to the sun and a little bit more narrow as we get further toward the bottom of the painting, and that'll give us that really rounded reflection looking shape. And we can always add more by just widening it out, get all that water movement happening. And of course up here at the top, our rounded setting sun shape wasn't quite as light as we wanted it to be the first time. Everything was picking up and mixing and blending, and we knew that was going to happen. We're okay with it. We're just going to jump right back in with a little bit of white, and you can see not filling in the whole thing white, just keeping it pretty light on like the top left corner. I know it's a circle, but if it had a circle shape, or if the circle had a corner, there we go, exactly where that upper left corner would be, and then pushing out little lines fanning around that little quarter circle. And we're not using any color to do this. It is just that same wet paint coming off of our quarter circle that we're pushing up and down and just gently spreading all the way around for that light to be beaming from that setting sun, just using all of the wet paint that's already there. Sometimes this will pick up a little bit of the background color and push around, and we like that. It actually makes it look a little more natural. And you can see we've lost our circular shape here, so of course just going back and touching that up again with a little bit more white. And this isn't going to stay solid white because everything is still wet under it. So if your painting has had a chance to dry and this is solid white, try adding a little bit of that yellow paint back in there, or even a little bit of that orange, and it'll help it not be so aggressively light. Same thing with the little pieces we're fanning out around here. If it's too light, add back in a little bit of your yellow or even a little bit of your orange, or you can even try pushing around some of your background colors in between some of those layers. Don't cover up everything that you did. All that work looks really good and you're doing a great job. Just adding it in between is a little extra. And of course, jumping back around, just kind of going over our highlight for our circular part, and then pressing in our little fanned out sun rays as much as we feel comfortable with, and then jumping into the water, adding a little bit more of a reflection here. This, we're just kind of bouncing the tip of that paintbrush off of there with just some plain white, just kind of barely tapping, almost like a little pat, or like a little bounce, or like a little jump off of the painting, so you just barely get any paint on there, and it leaves these little almost sparkle looks to that water. Just using a light little tap, bouncing it around, some plain white paint, maybe a little bit of water mixed in, but not too wet so that it doesn't drip. And then, of course, touching up our horizon line. There we go. Now you can see that horizon line, just making it nice and flat, just kind of defining wherever we want that water line to be. And of course, it is time to jump over to our night sky for the background part. So moving over that protective piece of painter's tape. And then this is just a pre-step that really helps whenever making a moon shape, in my opinion. You just go ahead and you put that white where you want it to be, so that if you get too close with your background color, it starts to go ahead and transition it into the moon shape. And this background color here is just blue-green with a little bit of white. So it's mostly blue, tiny tap of green to mix in there, and a little bit of white as well. And you can see we put that little quarter circle up there with our white at the beginning. It's just white paint on a whiteboard, so it's probably hard to tell. And we're just rounding our moon glow. It's a little different than the sun rays because it doesn't really beam out, so it just kind of glows around it. So we're going to just do rounded shapes. This here is just a darker blue. If you have a navy on hand, that's all this is. If you don't have a navy, you can even do blue with a tiny bit of black mixed into it, and it'll give you this color. And of course, rounding it in the sky around our quarter circle shape, and then rounding it in the water as well. And this is just some plain black paint going on the very corners, because that is our super dark night sky out there. So just taking a little bit of plain black and pushing it in from that corner, just barely going in at all. That black will go very far very quickly, so just being very gentle with it, and maybe using a little bit more of that blue to help blend it into the section that's already there. And there we go, is that blue helping it blend right there. We can just pick it up and push it right on the line where those two colors are touching, because they're both still wet, and that'll help them blend. And of course, water is your friend while you're using your paint. Don't get it too wet, but definitely use it to help everything move around. And then this is actually a little bit of purple we're putting right in between the blue-green and the navy. And you can see in the water where we started to push those little side-to-side lines for our little water movement and reflection of the sky. It's going to be very similar to what we did on the other side. We're leaving kind of the areas we got where everything was rounded and just kind of pushing out side to side. And up here in the sky, we're just blending. Okay, we have all of these colors and they're beautiful and wonderful and amazing. So we're just being very gentle with our paint and blending it out. Everything is still wet, so that tends to help. If things get a little too dry, sometimes you can pick up two colors that are touching and put them right on the line where they're touching to blend them together. So here I'm just using that lightest color from the middle outward to blend everything out, and then not even cleaning out the brush, just using that same one, jumping down here in the bottom and using whatever wet paint was already on it and doing those side to side little lines for our water waves. There we go, you can see it a little more clearly there. And we didn't get rid of that rounded glow shape that we had in the water here. We just added our little side to side lines on top of it and let whatever was going to happen on its own happen. Here we are with some plain white, just hitting that horizon line, so hitting right where that water is touching that moonset and just kind of defining that horizon line, just like we did over there on our sunset, and then just kind of pushing out that glow. The water works pretty much the same, it's just a little darker at nighttime, so we've got a little bit of a reflection of our rounded shape starting in the middle, and then of course touching up that quarter circle, our little half circle, whatever size circle we're going for here, just using a little bit of plain white, and you can see it picking up a little bit of background color right on the edge. We're okay with that. There's more color than just white to the moon, and we wanted to have a little bit of body and a little bit of texture at some point, so that's just a little bit of the background color. And there you can really see a little bit of the background color has been picked up, and once white paint picks up another color, it's gonna become whatever that color was, so we're just gonna let that happen. And then of course using that background color to touch up our rounded shape, and once again blending it out. We put a new color on there, everything's still wet, so we can just push it out gently to blend it and get that nice glow effect. Here is some plain white and just touching up our rounded shape and maybe patting in some more texture onto that moon. It's really hard to describe moon texture, but you're really just patting on paint and letting whatever happens happens. It's just random shrieks of paint to get a moon texture. And then here we go on the glow. It's just again some plain white paint. This is exactly like what we did on the other side. So you're just going to take the white and gently start tapping it in to that water. You can do little pushes of some streaks of some glow, or you can do just little gentle pats to get those little sparkly types of reflections. And then mixing in a little bit more water, you can kind of flick off some stars at the corners of that painting. Here we're going to be adding a few trees, so whether you did one half of the painting or both halves of the painting, you get some trees. This is just brown paint and a little bit of water. Sometimes you have to mix something in with brown paint, and you can do a little bit of black for this side where it's a little darker, or you can do a little bit of white over there where it's going to be lighter on the daytime. For these trees, they're just a little line for the trunk, and of course here you go, we can Y out like the letter Y, make some branches just like the letter Y coming out, making them a little bit smaller sometimes, a little bigger sometimes. We can put letter Y's on our Y's. This is just brown paint and a little bit of water, and every brown paint's a little different, so if you have to mix in some white or mix in a little bit of black or another brown, that's great. But just take the time to spread out as many branches as you want on that little tree trunk, and then of course make another line all the way off the top of that painting with our brown paint. This will give us another little tree trunk. This brown is actually the same brown as the other side of the painting. It just looks a little different because of what the background looks like. And then down here at the bottom, pushing in some tiny little brown lines. These are like little sticks or bushes or foliage or whatever you want to call it for that extra bit of land. And then here is just a darker green. This is just light little taps of a rounded brush shape. There's a lot of different ways that you can get these on here, but it's just little random taps and turning the brush around in all kinds of different directions. The paintbrush doesn't even have to be this rounded shape. It can really be any of them, and you just grab it and tap it around to get all these different textures. Here is a lighter green tapping onto the darker green, so we have like our little shadows or like our little leaves that are further in the background. And this is a little bit of a lighter green going on top of it, and some of these leaves are just in air, some of them are actually on the trunks. If there's a branch that we dislike, we can cover it up with these leaves and just tap it right on there, and no one will ever know that branch was there, right? This is a lighter green, which if you need to make a lighter green, you can mix in a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white paint, and it'll give you a lighter green, and then just jumping straight onto the other trees with this lighter green mixture. So this is the lighter one from the other side, and it's that green with a little bit of extra white and yellow mixed in, and just tapping it around in all different directions. This is going to be a little easier to see where those leaves are patting on there. So it's just really random, light little taps, turning that brush in all kinds of different directions to get all those fun little textures and leaf looking areas, putting some of them on tree branches, putting them on this little foliage down at the bottom, putting some of them in the air. They don't have to be connected to anything. They'll be maybe really tiny branches that we just can't see from all the way over here. And then of course making this even lighter than we did on the other side, making it a little bit more yellow and a little bit more white mixed in with that green that we already have, just to make a highlight, and tapping it around, letting it pick up a little bit of that undercolor. Sometimes that's okay to give us different colors that way. Here we switched it out because that was just a little too much of the darker color and we wanted to focus more on the highlight. So just wiping it off, getting a fresh amount of the really light lime green, that's just green, yellow, and white mixed together, and then tapping it around in all different directions to get those leaf textures, and just putting those leaves anywhere we want them to go. This is looking so good. Your painting is almost done. I'm so proud of you. You have done an absolutely amazing job today. Whether you chose to do one half of this as a whole painting or you did the whole thing, I'm very proud of you. Thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you soon.